Wallet. So the Land Raider Proteus, you can build it in 3 different ways. So why not magnetise the tank so that even when you're looking at the camera, you can swap over between the different front sections. Oh, Formula 1 speed there. Wallet. Go on, get on with it. So yeah, there's the 3 different types of Land Raider. 2 quite similar, with the one front there shown on the box, and then the other one with the assault ramp. Like most of the Imperial vehicles, tracks around the side, encapsulating a central box, rhomboid shape. So I'm going to throw this together. You can read the instructions. There's nothing particularly advanced in this whole kit. I'll highlight anything that's a bit weird. Build the tracks, build the engine, crack on. So I really like that armoured little panel on the top there, and that'll figure on both of the builds that I do. I don't actually build a third one, but you'll see why. So essentially I'm going to move around lots of these parts over and over and over as I'm working out how I'm going to do this. And quite quickly I think I come up with the idea of this panel here being used as a nice long spring to open up at the front, because it can flex over the length of that whole tank and give us an avenue, a door that can open slightly once the rest of the hull, the central hull, is all glued in place. So I quite quickly realised that by putting the engine section there, it's quite nicely fixed, and that very angular S shape there that I'm pointing at is a nice keying point for the other side. You can hook it onto that and then swing the front half of the tank track round to close up. So you can see here I'm just practicing inserting and extracting each of these parts just to make sure that another idea doesn't present itself. I came up with this idea when I saw the Spartan kit, which goes together on identical. This kit shares sprues with the Spartan. The Land Raider comes with extra las cannons for the quad las cannons that the Spartan has. Yeah, so while I'm thinking about how I'm going to approach the magnetising and everything, I'm just going back to these other parts, because the idea occurs to me of, rather than having that one and having all 3 with just that little window on it, why don't I use that armoured panel and put the viewing slot in there? I like that armoured panel, it's quite characterful, it looks nice and hench, very Space Marine classic shapes to it. So I finally decided I'm going to get rid of that, and much like these other bits, magnetise it into that little cupola. But what I will end up doing is just trimming away some of that plastic so as to give the magnet in there a better chance of pulling against it. I'm going to put one big magnet on the inside and then a smaller one on the outside. So there it is in place. Now I've tried out each of the weapons because I'm looking at how they work and how they look, and then seeing how I want to put that little window slot in there. And yeah, it looks a little bit buried in there, so what I'm going to do, looking at the original, I kind of want to mimic that. So I'm going to find a little bit of something, a greebly of some kind, some bit of crap that's swirling around in the back edge of my desk there, to fill the gap. It's some kind of Space Marine doohickey and a couple of bits of plasticard eventually that just block that out a little bit further. I did look again at that panel, see whether I can cut something off of it, cut off the whole thing and build it out of that, but it's at an angle. I don't think that's going to work. So here, yeah, I've just glued in that little bit of gubbins behind that viewing slot, and I've just stacked it up on a couple of pieces of plasticard just to shim it up so that the back portion lines up. It's all at the right height, so the slot doesn't sit too high and clash on the top. So here we go, I'm just trimming out those little bits on the inside, choppy. Got my sharper knife that I cut with, and then you'll probably see me every now and again I'll pick up the other one, which is my scraping knife, because it's gone blunt. I don't mind just scraping flash and mould lines off with that. So this is the thin super glue, just put a little dab of that in. I'll then drop the magnet in and I'll back it up with a bit of bicarbonate of soda. I don't know if you've seen any other of my videos, but I love this stuff. It accelerates the super glue, and it also acts as like a filler, gives it some body. So I'm just pushing it into the centre with the sticky end of a paintbrush. Don't do it with the bristles, that won't end well. So another little blob of glue, and then just using the blunt end of the scalpel, dropping some bicarbonate of soda on top of that. Give it a little tap so that it all settles and shakes down into place. And then I normally do that over the lid, give it a little tap, get out the excess, and then I can get the lid and tip it back in the pot. Job's a good one, lovely. So just gonna step up with the drill bits, find the centre with the small one, give it a start. Now I could go in with one big fat drill bit, but because that piece is only fractionally wider than the largest drill bit, it's better, safer to go in small and step up 0.5 millimetre at a time. I've got 3 drill presses that just sit on my tool rack there, so I can grab whichever one I want. I don't have to fuck around with drill bits and things flying around while I've got glue on the go. You know, first order retrieval. Whatever tool you've got should be close to hand for the job. Put them all away, get out your painting tools to do your painting. So this is the thicker gel super glue that I use, and I know that glue isn't going to run off as I turn it upside down, drip onto the nice model that I'm trying to build. So there we go, that's the little visor piece glued in. Looks alright, but it does have a little bit of a shift to it. So what I do, and I'll put just a sliver of plasticard on the underside, and what that will do there, you see, is it means it's now, that piece of card will run on that hull of the tank and stay nice and level, because it's riding on something wider rather than just floating in space. So I know it'll always look square in the tank. So just pushing it into place with the blunt scalpel, pushing it in, and I can feel when the glue sets up, and then I'll just lay it to one side. I can sit it in place, and a couple of minutes later, yeah, beautifully flat and level. Got a little bit of a shadow gap under there, gives it a bit of separation. Lovely. Right, back to this head scratch. I've glued in the bottom panel, but I'm not sure at what point I'm going to glue in that top piece. Now that piece obviously now is going to be the same for all 3 options, as I've simplified 2 of them down to the 1. So I do play around with this bottom panel on the underside of it quite a bit, and then I do eventually find out what's bugging me. It's got a slight twist to it, and there's a shot of that in a minute. It's just got a slight twist to it where it's come out of the mould and where the plastic's cooling. and where it's probably just come off of the end of a production line into a bin, and it might have had a bit of pressure on it or something. Ordinarily, of course, when you glue it in together with all the other parts, it can be pulled flat. But of course, in this instance, it's a bit of a pain because it doesn't sit perfectly flat. It kind of twists from the back, and it doesn't give even pressure. And I wanted an even pressure so that it all closed up, which is why this fast forwarded bit here is me going, what the fuck, what the fuck, what the fuck? How many fucks am I allowed on YouTube? This is me going, oh, I wonder why. Now, so this front section here is a tricky one. It's not got a great deal. It's only got tiny little tabs on either side of the top panel and a couple of tiny little teeth on the underside. But those two little bits of axle, when they're glued in, they key into one of those two little circles at the front of the Land Raider. Now the other thing I do here, just to help our pieces hold in place, is glue this little bit of springy plasticard on the underside of that front piece of the hull. And that, as you see there, I'm modelling with my thumb just to see if it works, will help push that upwards and give a more positive connection with those two little tabs that you can see they're only like 3 or 4 mil wide. So I'm going to glue that in place because I'm pretty sure if it doesn't work, I can tear it off, sand it flat. It's on the inside, so it's not a problem. As you can see, I'm still holding this piece of the hull so that I can move things around. Had I been a bit braver, I could have glued it in already like the rest of it, but I just wasn't sure I was going to go exactly down this route. So this is part of the thought process. You can see it slips between the hinges there on the assault ramp piece, and also does its job there of holding that in place. You see a much more positive connection. So there's those axles set up. For some reason, one of my cables was being a bit weird. I didn't get the footage of this being glued in place. But what I did was I clamped it in between, and then I put the glue in and moved. Then I put the parts together and clamped them in place. I made sure that I had the front section pulled forward. You can see it's got little key shapes there, and you could line up magnets to give you an extra bit of grip there. I didn't end up doing it. If it falls apart, then I can always pop them out and maybe put some in there if I find it really is irritating. But it's pretty strong, it does the job, and you'll see. I'll do a little demo. It all holds together pretty well in the end. Oh, he's come over to say hello, so we'll have a musical interlude. You can like and subscribe while the cat's doing that, while he's just pouring at my balls. Now, there you go, there's that shot. You can see the twist on it. You can actually see how straight it looks when you twist it. And that, of course, is why I've got this funny, well, it's springy on one side. You can see how much wider it is compared to the scalpel, how it flares out to one side. So maybe if you glue your kit together, you might want to push that all together and have a look and see if there's a bias, and then if it's got a twist to it, glue the other side. I didn't notice this till after I glued the other side on. You might want to glue on the left side, whereas I've glued on the right, or vice versa. Now you see throughout this I didn't have the doors on because I was actually thinking, well, maybe I'll have a flash of inspiration and I'll attach these to each other. I'll cut out the underside and I'll magnetise the doors, and there'll be a special way of holding them together. I wasn't dead set. I go into a lot of these builds with an idea of how it's going to work, but then of course, you know, the first time you move these parts around in your hand, you might be inspired, to go another route. As it turns out, I didn't know quite how I was going to do these magnetising each half together. As it turns out, I can just use these tabs. Now, if you're going to do this, glue the magnets together now with that spare piece rather than doing what I did. So yeah, I got distracted by something, probably a cat, and didn't glue them in there, and when it was going to be so much easier. Now, as it turns out, I've got to try and stick them in there. Now what you can see there, I've glued all the way around from the front to the back section. I do end up gluing a little bit further along the back tab of those three. Now you see I forgot to put those magnets on when it was all open, so now I've got to do it on a stick. So that magnet is on a bit of blue tack on a wooden lollipop stick, popsicle for you Yanks. Put it on with a bit of blue tack. I clamp it in place with another magnet just while it's setting up. Now of course, because some idiot didn't glue them together when it was open, he's got to put a little bit of permanent marker on it, just because it's all too easy just to accidentally turn over the magnet or it flips and you don't see it, because they look identical. I just put a bit of black marker on it, permanent marker, so that I can see that I definitely put the glue on the other side. So there we go, push them together and you can see through that hatch that the two magnets are sitting in place. Right, what's next? So that is magnetised, and yep, that's strong enough. I don't know about you, but I don't shake my tanks about that hard when I'm playing a game of 30k, 40k, whatever you're going to use this for. And there we go, this is it in action. Spring it apart a little bit and pull it out. It's not too bad, bit of practice, I'll figure that out. Yeah, and popping off those little tiny tabs. You see, they're absolutely minute and they key into these two little holes there you can see. And there's more than enough to hold them in place. I'm just clamping that, by the way, just so that it's held in place while the glue goes off, because I'm still excited and trying to build this now that I think I might have figured it out. So there we go, you can see the action, get the front in and then just kind of roll the back in, little wiggle and it goes into place. As I say, I'll get much quicker at this once I figure it out. So you can see this is my technique for putting it together, kind of hook on the back, that little square piece on the back, and then hinge it over, hinge the front round to close it up. Right, I'm having a little squeeze on it and there's a little tiny shake, a little wobble, and 3.5 minutes of jiggling according to the timer, and a bit of looking with a ruler and running my tongue along it. I find that little tiny tab there. Is it that tab? No, it's not that tab. I'll trim it away anyway, but afterwards I find out it's not. Put it back together. No, something else. What the fuck? There's nothing else there. It's right there. You're shitting me. One of those rivets. One bloody rivet. Look at that. Nothing. Princess and the Pea, that is. It really is the Princess and the Pea. Whew. Here we go. Hook it on. Ta-da! That's just me overdoing it, but it doesn't shake now. Phew! Lovely. Yeah, so you can see I'm clamping it. Hold it a little bit further forward there, and I'm like, you know what? Yeah, let's glue that, because I'm worried that if I don't, it will pop along that seam that runs across the width of the tank. It's a really thin contact point, so I just want a little bit more something holding that in place. I haven't got anything big enough to clamp that, so the cats come back and I'm just gonna put a big old 1, 2, 3 block on it and give him some chuching. He's buggered off again, so I can glue up the magnets into the other parts, made up the sponsons and the other weapon options that I'm going to use for now. Really not sure how I'm going to run this, as you might have guessed, because, you know, it's got so many options. Still fathoming out how Heresy 2.0 actually plays. I think that is the smallest and most annoying piece of Warhammer what I have ever glued. No. It's always a weird bit, but that one felt particularly daft. Just the size of that it wasn't one piece that went all the way around the front and wasn't like... You can see how small it is compared with my thumbnail. I've got fat little thumbs, but what a mission. Anyway, there you go, tank. The assault ramp is a bit trickier to put in, but once you get the feel of it, did it? Pretty quick. Not that you're going to be doing it that quick, because you're going to have painted it beautifully. You're not going to shake your Land Raider around like that, though, are you? And then the other one, bit of squeeze. This one there's a lot less going on, so it's far easier just to pop that in place. The other one, where it comes back into the body, you have to put a little bit more pressure to ping that down, so you slide it in place. And again, much the same, slides on and proof is in the pudding. Moves around a tiny bit, makes a bit of a racket, but it's not imploding into the tank. You can push it in there against the spring, but it soon pops back out easy enough. It's not gonna, you don't have to fuck around with it. It still looks like a tank. But you don't have to buy this one, buy that one, buy that one. If you change your list around as you're, you know, we're still learning the game. I've still only had 4 games. And I'm not sure what I want to run this as, because I'm going to put Headhunters for my Alpha Legion in it. And I don't know if it's got Scout, or whether I want to outflank it with an assault ramp, or what quite yet. So having the option makes sense, and it's another reason to do another weird video, eh? It's not doing too bad.